hate laws, political betrayal, and a government accused of pushing legislation that could change who gets targeted next. But in one explosive interview, Pauline Hanson doesn't hold back. She backs the MPs who just quit the Nationals front bench and calls it good on them, while tearing straight into what she says is a rushed, dangerous lawmaking process. But the real shock comes when she claims this isn't just policy failure. It's a calculated political trap designed to split the opposition and expand government power far beyond what Australians expected.
Against the laws along with One Nation, we picked it right from the very start, Chris, that these laws were unworkable, weren't unnecessary and should not have been introduced to the Parliament. The laws that they put before the Senate inquiry last week, they weren't the same laws that they brought into the Parliament. They brought in new legislation at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and then they were debated on. We're talking about 500 pages. A lot of the original was carved out. Do you know that 7,000 submissions from the public were presented to the committee by Thursday afternoon last week? That was all thrown into the bin. So this government had no intentions of listening to what the Australian people wanted, and they were not right for Australia. So my concerns is what's going to happen in the future with these laws that we've introduced.
I've got to say, my observation, I made this early on as well, and others have done the same, and that is that, of course, this government's been very lax when it comes to anti-Semitism and standing by Israel, and panicked after Bondi because they are culpable. They haven't done enough to keep the country safe. So they've gone for a legislative response that makes it look like they're doing something, and I think have quite deliberately picked measures which they knew would create strife for the coalition, gun laws and hate speech laws. They knew a lot of coalition MPs would have trouble with this, and instead of just rejecting it outright, the coalition has actually fallen into their trap and become divided about them.
The coalition have been absolutely pathetic in how she's handled this, and she negotiated with the government. They basically made no real changes to the legislation at all, but they've backed these laws which could impact, because the impact it could have further down the track, it's overreach by a minister by having so much powers.
Yeah.
And then what they didn't take into consideration is the hate speech laws of the states will be taken in consideration. So if a minister wanted to reign in a group as hate speech, which he determines, he can then say, no, you've got a member that's joined that, so then you actually are putting that group at risk because they may have one member. That is retrospective, can go back in time and see what they've put up on their social medias or spoken about. So every state has different hate speech laws, which is going to be taken up by the federal government. It's just overreach. And the constitutional expert lawyer in this, Anne Toomey, summed it all up. She said the politicians should have taken a breath with all this, rather than passing these laws. She's concerned about how they could be used against different groups and organisations.
Exactly.
And she didn't say it, but it's targeting. One Nation could be targeted with this law.
There's no doubt there could be unintended consequences, no doubt about it at all. I want to get you on the polls, Pauline. I haven't caught up with you since you've topped the coalition in the latest news poll. Does this change your aspirations for the party? Do you think that One Nation could in any way, shape or form become a party that, not a party of government perhaps, but a party that could share government?
Oh, most definitely, Chris. Most definitely. And that's what I will be actually striving for with the right people around me to be a team. It's quite interesting now, the number of people who are actually coming forward to want to be candidates, credible people, high-profile people, people who really want to make a difference to the country. We are powering ahead. Our membership is still growing quite a lot. People are interested now. They're pinning the hopes on One Nation to get our country back. So it's about having a voice to actually reign in both major political parties. They have this elitist attitude that no one else should be governing this country but them, and that's why we're in hell of a mess. I'm not going to sit back on my laurels. I want to take it up to them, and I want to say, you get your act together, otherwise we're going to be the true opposition in this country, or government one day for the people to actually support us.
Now, you're going to have to win seats in the lower house, and the way you're polling, you could do it. But you need to, for the good of the country, you need to try and take some seats off Labor off Labor rather than the coalition. Are there regional Labor seats, I'm thinking in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales and in Queensland, where you think could actually win seats from Labor?
Yes. Yes, it is. I think Blair and Ipswich is winnable. That's a Labor seat as well. But Chris, the election's a couple of years down the track. But the polling in rural and regional areas is around 32%.
Wow.
So once you get out of the cities, nationally it's 22%. Rural and regional areas is higher. With that percentage of the primary vote, you actually are able to win those seats. But it's a long way to go, Chris, and I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch.
Well, keep in touch.
I need to get those right people on board.
You sure do. Fascinating times. Thanks for joining us, Pauline. Pauline Hanson there live from Queensland.
The moment Pauline Hanson was asked about the sudden collapse inside the Nationals, she didn't hesitate. She didn't soften it. And she certainly didn't offer political comfort. Instead, she backed the rebellion instantly and framed it as proof that the government had pushed things too far. And what makes this exchange so striking is how quickly the conversation turns from a simple political update into a direct accusation of legislative overreach. When asked whether she would try to bring the defecting Nationals into one nation, Hanson shuts it down immediately, but not before delivering praise that cuts directly against the government narrative. She congratulates them for standing their ground, aligning them with her own party's position, and essentially reinforcing the idea that this was not just a disagreement, but a justified protest. From there, she doesn't slow down. Hanson launches into a detailed breakdown of what she sees as a broken legislative process. She points to the hate speech laws as something fundamentally rushed, claiming the government replaced legislation at the last minute, dumped hundreds of pages into debate, and ignored thousands of public submissions. And this is where the tone sharpens. Her argument is no longer just about policy. It becomes about legitimacy. She frames the process as if public input was ignored entirely, suggesting that the government had already decided the outcome before the debate even began. Then comes the escalation. Hanson argues that the laws are not just flawed, but dangerous in their structure. She claims they could give ministers excessive power to define hate speech in a way that could potentially extend to individuals, groups, and even historical online activity. This is where her framing shifts from criticism to warning. She suggests the laws could have unintended consequences that reach far beyond their original intent, effectively turning a legal framework into a tool of political enforcement. And then she takes it one step further. Hanson suggests the political establishment has fallen into a trap, claiming the government intentionally pushed controversial laws knowing they would split the opposition and create internal conflict within the coalition. In her framing, this is not just policy failure, but strategic political manipulation. By this point in the interview, the narrative has fully transformed. What began as a question about party defections has now become a broader attack on the entire political process, the government's decision-making, and the long-term implications of federal power. And when the discussion shifts to one nation's rise in polling, Hanson turns from criticism to ambition. She openly declares that her party is preparing for a much larger role, not just as a protest vote, but as a governing force. She highlights growing candidate interest, rising membership, and increasing support in regional areas as evidence that the political landscape is shifting. Her message is clear. The major parties are no longer unchallenged. And she closes the political vision by framing one nation as the alternative force ready to take it up to both Labor and the coalition, positioning herself not just as an opposition voice, but as a future power contender. The interview ends on electoral strategy, targeting regional seats, especially in Queensland and New South Wales, with Hanson signaling confidence that the numbers are already shifting in her favor. And that's where this exchange ultimately lands. Not just a reaction to hate laws, but a broader declaration of political momentum, frustration with the establishment, and a belief that the system itself is becoming unstable enough for a third force to rise. Like, share, and subscribe for more explosive political updates and breaking debates. Comment your opinion below. We want to hear what you think about this.